Hello retro gamers, here's a new acquisition. It's a Atari 520 STfM, and I'd never experienced an Atari back in the 80s or 90s. I was an Amiga owner. My parents bought me an Amiga 500 Plus, or should I say my parents bought us a 500 Plus for my sister and I to use. So this is my very first experience of an Atari machine, or an Atari ST. I got this for £25, the machine and the games here, or discs. There's a variety of software, some pirated stuff, so no different to the Amiga, and some original software. I had to buy a mouse, but I think for 25 quid, I got the machine collected. It was probably a fair price, and it was just a spur of the moment thing. I saw it listed, no one else bid on it, and here it is. It seems to work nicely. I did buy a SCART cable from Cool Novelties, and that's given me a really nice sharp picture here on my multi-sync Samsung monitor. So I'm pleased it all works. And then first impressions. Obviously I grew up with an Amiga, and I'm really heavily biased towards an Amiga. That was my experience, and I'm aware of all the rivalry between Commodore and Atari back in the day when these machines, or this machine, was current. But I'm really pleased that I can now have a go on Atari for the first time. So I've learned a little bit. I'm not going to say by any means I'm an expert on Atari, but I understand. One time the discs were sort of lower capacity, single-sided, and then they became double-sided, so I have to navigate that. I believe this is a double-sided drive. This is a 520 STfM, and I believe the F means it's got an integrated floppy drive. Thankfully this one's double-sided, and the M stands for modulator, which I think is the RF thing out the back, and it's 520, which I think means it's got half a mega RAM. But so I'm quite pleased with the choice of model. I have everything integrated. Half a mega RAM I think is pretty good, although I'm used to 1 meg on an Amiga. I think half a meg is probably more than everything I need. So my first impressions of this are, I like the size. It is a little bit more compact than an Amiga 500. I like the F keys. They're diagonal, they look interesting. I like the design of the drive and the diagonal slanted eject button. It's just a nice little touch. The integrated modulator. So if you were to connect it, the modulator would probably be the worst way to connect it to a modern TV today. But on the Amiga, you used to have this thing, the 520, which would stick out the back, and it would just clutter up your desk, and it would move, and the picture would go all funny sometimes, and it just looked ugly. So kudos to Atari. That's a nice design feature. Also, the power supply is integrated into this particular model. So on the Amiga you would have this big huge box to put under somewhere, and I used to keep my feet warm on this in winter. This used to be under the desk, and I could put my feet on top and keep myself warm. Whether that was a good idea, I don't know, but it's what I did. So I like those design features. I think Commodore could have really taken that into account with their models. The other thing I like, there's a physical reset switch rather than pressing the keys, and you have a physical reset switch on the back. I like that. Picture, and the quality of the image and the colours in games. I know it has a lower palette, but it's pretty good. Some things that I'm not so keen on, this has always been talked about, I think, in other videos. The joystick ports are under here. They are quite difficult to get to. The reset key, so I'm used to on the Amiga pressing Control Amiga to reset. You can't do that in game. You can do it when you're on this desktop here, and that's another good thing. I like that the whatever you want to call it, the equivalent of Workbench, the GEM desktop, doesn't need to be loaded from a disk. It's already built into the system. And I think if I have a look at this one, what is this? TOS. So I think this is Tramiel operating system. I think some people call Jack Tramiel, who was head of Atari back then, but I believe or the operating system anyway. It's a nice rainbow effect here, but this is already built in, so you don't have to load it like you did on the Amiga, so that's nice, although it looks very simple. But anyway, so yeah, you can use the keyboard reset when you're in here, but if you've got a game, it doesn't work. But that's minor when you've got a physical reset switch here. So yeah, and I believe this machine would have retailed for £269 in the UK. At the time, we got our Amiga 500 Plus Cartoon Classics pack, which I think was £399. So it was cheaper. Let me just pop in Lemmings here, one of my favourite games. So this, I believe the Atari STs were cheaper than the equivalent Amigas, and you know, I've been playing with it, and I understand some of the limitations around the sound chip. You know, maybe expandability wasn't quite as common. I know there's no trapdoor here. I think it's a little bit harder to upgrade the RAM. You know, a lot of people have a go at the sound chip. There's no sound here on the intro to Lemmings, whereas on the Amiga there is. I know I've mentioned the colour palette, but actually I was thinking about this a lot. Would I have been happy if my parents bought me back this machine and not the Amiga 500 Cartoon Classics? Well, to be honest, despite maybe the slightly lower colour palette, maybe the sound chip not being as good, I think I would have been happy. A lot of the games, you know, they only look maybe slightly different because of the reduced colour palette. The sound, well, you know, it's still, you know, there's lots of nice tunes coming out when it does play. I'll just skip this intro. But all the games I think I would have enjoyed on the Amiga were on the ST. Lemmings here being one example. Bart versus the Space Mutants, which was in the Cartoon Classics pack, was also on this, I believe. Cannon Fodder, Sensible Soccer. I think the vast majority of games were already on the ST. Here I'm just firing up Lemmings. I think I would have been quite happy. Admittedly, I love the Amiga, but if my parents had come back with this, I think I would have just had as much fun. But to be honest, I never knew anyone that had an Atari ST. I don't know why. Maybe it was just the circles that I was in as a teenager back then. But yeah, I mean, I'll just turn up the audio here. I think it's a chiptune, but you know, it's music, perfectly entertaining. Graphics here, perfectly good. Yeah, I would have been happy with this. I'm going to look forward to trying out a lot of games on this ST. And if I double click on the new, it doesn't say "oh no," but perfectly playable. And yeah, good machine. Look forward to exploring it a bit more. Got lots of games and cover discs to try out here. Maybe I'll pop some more in a review later. But overall, yeah, like it. It's going to stay here, and lots more for me to enjoy on it. Thanks for watching.